Okay, it is 5 p.m. We are starting today's policy and governance meeting. First is the approval of the minutes for March 24th, 2026. Do I have a motion?
And February.
In February. Okay, I can do them both at the same time. Okay, awesome. In February 24th, 2026. Do I have a motion from the floor?
Motion to approve both.
Motion approved. Who is our, you want to be?
I don't know if it's me or not.
You can be the stand-in today, Molly. Seconded. All in favor? Aye. Anybody not in favor? Nope. So we will start with discussion item, which is the 700s policies, non-instructional operations and business services. Chase,
Sure.
is
So,
that you?
good evening. We do have a few items on the agenda tonight, and before we get into the 700s, I wanted to just mention a policy that's not on the agenda tonight, because Kim and I were talking about this afternoon. The financial oversight charter, we talked about it at this meeting, but then we also talked about it at our last financial oversight, and Kim and I, going back to look at the minutes, the conclusion from that meeting is that charter would go back to the Financial Oversight Committee for further consideration to policy and governance. So that's why it's not on the agenda this evening. For the 700s, we've had them at P&G. We also had some discussion at Financial Oversight, and now we have them back. What we're showing are the updates to all the policies because they've not been approved by the board. And so we can, Director Lingo, it's kind of difficult to go through all the changes without going through everything again. I can highlight some of the ones that are new from last time, or we can just open up to the floor to questions or ones that the board specifically wants to discuss.
Could you highlight the new changes and then we'll open it up?
Sure.
That sounds good.
So we have about 7 policies where either coming out of the first P&G meeting or coming out of financial oversight, there were some additional suggested changes. The first one is 701.3G1, vendor W-9 procedures. And we added a new section for all vendors regarding ACH being a preferred payment method. That's something that the interim CFO, Kim Michael Lee, has talked about as a process improvement.
What's an ACH? Direct deposit. Okay, thank you.
701.5 fiscal management, we added language, the second paragraph that the superintendent reviews and approves financial data prior to being presented to the board. 704.4 gifts, grants, and bequests is the language added that the business office grant accountant will be responsible for grant recording, keeping, and tracking. And just that's a newer position that we've had. And so as these policies have come back up, really lining out, that's where those responsibilities will be in that office. The next change is 707.1, the presentation and publication of financial information, adding language and clarity around it being the superintendent's responsibility to ensure that the treasurer submits the reports to the board annually. Again, just providing some clarity there for responsibilities. The next change since our last meeting, 705.3, payments for goods and services. Again, going back to adding that language around ACH or direct deposits, and then our W-9 requirements. 707.4, the audit. We've added some language to clarify responsibilities around for the external auditors. And then the last update, not for the entire series, but since we met last time on this, is to 707.5G1 around capital projects and planning, and adding language regarding adding steps for our external advisory on financial strategy as part of our process as we move through any new capital improvements or projects. So I went quickly, but I know we have a packed agenda this evening, so happy to answer questions on those. Other changes, one other note I had at the beginning that I forgot to mention was we've talked about the new P-card policy at the last 2 meetings. We didn't have any additional updates. It was just that we wanted to come back for additional discussion. So we don't really have any changes to that right now, but that is also in the 700s for additional discussion possibly this evening.
Okay, opening up questions from the table or comments.
I have a
few.
Okay.
But my first two are really about a connection to the Financial Oversight Committee, and that is with 701.5 fiscal management. There's the third paragraph states that the district will measure whether, the board will establish and review financial goals annually. The district will measure whether these goals were obtained as of June 30. So what I'm thinking about all the things that we're wanting to accomplish through the Financial Oversight Committee, and I'm thinking that those items would be good for an annual calendar. I know that we have a start of a calendar for activity for that committee, but I want to be sure that we are mindful on an annual basis of the need to do those things as a board. And then similarly for 703.1 budget planning, there are 4 bullet points at the top that are seem to me good items to connect to the Financial Oversight Committee. So just trying to connect those dots for going forward.
The first one was 701.5, Director?
Yes,
Okay.
fiscal management. Another, I don't know if we're ready to go to the P-card policy
Have at it.
discussion. I know that this has been raised before. I know Director Williams brought this up, and probably other people. I'm thinking they're on page 5 of that sort of booklet insert where it says purchasing guidelines and approvals. My question is, how will time-sensitive and unexpected situations be handled? I think Director Williams gave some good examples of that. You know, your music program gets stopped at O'Hare mid-Europe trip. So I didn't see where that was addressed anywhere. And I didn't know if we want to address that here or what we want to do.
I'd actually like to see a money amount that could be done with post-approval of the purchase, because I think there's just too many things that come up fast that aren't going to be qualified as emergency. It's not going to be a bunch of kids stuck in Chicago, but you're going to be in the middle of getting ready for the play, and you need to run and buy something, or some small, I wish we could have some small amount that we could say this would be post-purchase approval. And I also am a little stymied about the 4-person approval plan. That just seems like a lot of approvals to happen for every purchase.
Kurt, do you want to talk to them about at least what we communicated with the principals about some of those unexpected situations that may arise?
Yeah, so certainly appreciate that feedback, and we can work through some of those things. As far as the kind of the emergency, the example I gave our secondary administrators when we met with them, because they kind of have the bulk of this work with athletics activities and just general secondary things. I had the question about emergencies, and I posed it to them. I said, well, personally, if I've got a pipe leaking in a building and I go and spend $200 on a sleeve to fix the leak without going through this process, I personally don't know that I'd get in a lot of trouble, because I used it to take care of what was an actual emergency and get through that. And so I said, I think that's your role as professionals to make that determination of what's an emergency versus what should have gone through the approval process. Because you're right, absolutely right, Director Abrams, there are things that just come up, and I think our building leaders need that freedom to understand what's that situation look like and make that determination. Now, we can codify that in here with some language, but it's going to be up to everybody's interpretation of what's an emergency versus what is not. And certainly we can entertain an amount, and I'd be curious to know what the groups thought of what that fair amount might be.
I mean, there's a lot of small purchases with the
Yeah.
cards, so really like I don't know, in my head, I thought 100, and then I thought 500, that's probably too high. But, I mean, something that could take the small purchases, that they don't have to go through all these steps, and that it can be the administrator's discretion, rather than, sort of micromanaging with a four-person approval.
Right, yep, for sure. And again, our goal would be people try to use the purchase order process more than the credit cards overall.
Right.
Just because there's more oversight on those and better tracking of both the actual order and the payment of the order, whereas the credit card kind of puts us in that situation of not easily able to be denied unless we make somebody actually go return the good or service.
Right. And, certainly I had a better understanding, I think I said that to the three of you, that after that long email from that person explaining why this was so horrible, that we had all these post-approval P-card purchases. So I thought, okay, I get it, I get that part, but I still think we should have some discretion for smaller things.
So what's the flavor of the group in terms of coming back to this? We want to add some language about emergency usage? Do we want to have a limit of, or a kind of a ceiling of under $50, you don't need any what's the flavor of the group, I guess, on that?
Is that your recommendation, $50 a mark, or what would?
It's a difficult one to pinpoint, because,
It
I mean,
is.
it could be, if that last minute item that you need for the play could be $200, it
Could
could
be
be
more.
more than, that's the,
Well, it's not even just the last minute, it's going through that four-person approval process to go get something, I don't know, yeah.
what came up with the idea for a four-person approval process? What did you see that, or, I assume since it's either of you, what went into a four-person? That's,
We can certainly shorten that.
yeah,
I think right now it goes to the building principal, Lucas, myself, and then Lisa Goodwin, who's kind of the administrator. So Lisa Goodwin, who is the last step, is kind of just the checkoff, right? Like,
yeah.
it's made it through the whole process once it gets to her. So it's really just,
So she doesn't really
No, if something's missing,
approve or not approve.
No.
yeah.
She's more-
Once it hits either the CFO, I mean, it will be the CFO here in the next few weeks. That's kind of this is good, and then Lisa's just the
Okay,
checkoff.
okay, so it's really a three-person.
Yeah, and back to,
The big thing from her lens that's helpful for me is looking at the balance, is if their balance can afford
Right.
what they're looking to pay. And if it's not, then it's a conversation that I have, is it coming from the different accounters or fundraising money that's coming into that account to help offset that expense?
Yeah, she's not approving, she's just
Right,
the
she's
record
just marking
keeper.
it off, okay.
Yeah.
The person that's like, you're gonna hit negative balance, so Lucas, please
Yeah,
figure
and
this
then-
out.
And then if somebody wants to approve it going over budget, then she would seek that.
and the other thing we talked about with them, as far as those emergency situations, if we can't necessarily come to an agreement on an amount, was even just an email or a text message to your supervisor of, hey, I need to go do this for this amount, this is the reason. Then you've at least got some documentation that we're the auditors to come back and say, hey, what happened with this? Lucas could pull up in his email, hey, John Bacon emailed me this amount for this date, for this use. And then there's just documentation that some attempt or communication was made, even if it didn't go through the full formal approval tree.
The other thing I noticed about the P-card reports this month when I went through is there was some additional detail.
Yeah.
That was super helpful. That was good. I mean, not all of them, but, some of them would say, City High debate, or, so it made it a lot more clear to.
Yeah.
There's been an effort to do that.
Yeah, in that same meeting we had with them, we said the more documentation we can provide for all these things, it's gonna be better off for audits and things. And again, we pointed out to that group, this is to protect all of us in terms of the more information you provide, the more documentation you provide, it's just gonna be better to be able to be defended.
Okay, I'll say four-person approval.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anything else on 700s or P card?
What do we want to do with the P-card? Do we need to give some direction here?
Yeah, what are you looking for direction?
Like, put in something about emergencies, however, I don't know how you say that.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at that language and bring that back.
And is there any, I mean, what about an amount? Am I the only one that thinks that's a thought?
I kind of want to steer away from a dollar amount because what could be, right now, I mean, price of something can, you know, like you said, something for the theater could be $250, or a sleeve for a pipe could be $50. And what if that sleeve for that pipe goes up to $52?
Right.
So at $2, you now need to
No,
run
it
it
doesn't
through.
need it.
So that's why I would like to steer away from that.
And to the point about, oh, well, if there's fundraising going, you know, like, there's context around it too that may not be obvious, just like with a black and white dollar cutoff,
Yeah.
so.
I think it's gonna just be hard at first because it's so outside of the norm. So I know you are getting a lot of complaints from teachers about the inconvenience and even maybe some administrators, but I think we're just trying to shift the culture. And so it's gonna take a minute, and then we can kind of ease up maybe.
Sometimes when people get used to it, then it becomes like, oh yeah, that's just policy, we just gotta do it.
Yeah.
They get used to it, but they've been not accountable for so long that now you're making them do it, so.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
part of the rationale, I'm assuming, behind this is to get funding back to a normal situation instead of just spending, right? Like,
Yeah, well, and part of it, I think that Kurt also mentioned there is, in some way, you are trying to discourage credit card use, right? You're trying to go through an approval process so that, I don't know, this is much about curbing the funding, but making sure there's accuracy, that there is the funds there to support the purchase, rather than the reaction. You know, you're proactively looking and say, yes, we have sufficient funding to support that, so.
Right.
In some ways,
if there wouldn't be, then yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the approach directly.
I mean, I don't feel like people are going around using credit cards willy-nilly at this point, so I don't see it curbing anything either. But, well, it may stop.
I think if we look at
people.
the-
They have to go through the whole process. Unfortunately, then that might mean they just go buy it themselves, you know, I mean, that happens, you know that happens. Teachers buy their own stuff, administrators too, but
I'm
that's
not,
their deal if they don't want to go through the process, I guess.
I'm not
Yeah, I
trying
think
to.
we just want to make sure we have the funds to support the purchase, right? I think that's the big thing. And, you know, it's better, you know, then we're not dealing with the problem after the fact either. And like you said, Molly, I don't think it's rampant, but I do hear these guys say a lot to me, right? If we could get this credit card spending under control some, you know, I mean, that would help improve our situation. There's just a lot of spending that happens there.
And I'm not trying to open up the Student Activities Fund Pandora's box at this meeting, but it's like, how do you control that deficit if you don't?
Right.
Because when you look through that list, it seems like every other entry is something that's probably Student Activities Fund related.
Yeah. Well, because you're right, we could get on a.
Yeah.
kind of a
No, I'm not-
but, yeah,
but I don't wanna
start
get into
talking
that,
about
but
what's
it's-
fundraised
yeah.
for, and then, okay, do they really have the sufficient funds to support that, or have they spent those fundraising dollars 2 or 3 times, right? And then we've lost track of that, and so I think I think that's correct, Director Lingo. You know, you start to get into those, okay, do we really have, again, the funding level to support the purchases? And it's better to do that on the front end than trying to react to that and say, oh, you actually overspent your budget on that. And we're not, at that point, going to deny something to the kid
Yeah.
after we've already purchased it, correct? So,
In some ways, it helps protect the user of the P card, right?
yeah, same.
About how many student activity funds, separate funds, are being used or in existence now?
Funds or credit cards?
Credit cards, I'd say.
I think we've got in the neighborhood of 30.
There's a list of them somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got the email.
Yeah, I know some buildings have as many as 9.
And I think that's another piece of it, just bringing down the number of cards will also help curtail, slow down, make sure there's more oversight on what's being spent. So that's a good question, Charlie, as we look at that, and how do we work with the administrators of the buildings about which programs need a card, or which programs can come use the card that the principal has, rather than having their own. So we're probably bringing them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we bring it back with language about emergency expenditures.
Yeah,
Director Lingo, look
yeah,
at it.
emergency, I'm like, So then we can move on to unless there's anybody else for anything under 700s.
I have one other question.
go ahead.
Under 705.3, payment for goods and services. It's really just a question about the second to last paragraph, the use of the word warrants. So earlier, it's talking about, board secretary or CFO to issue payment for bills and determine that the claims are in order and so on. And then it says board president, board secretary, or board treasurer may sign warrants. And I was just not sure if that's,
Can you tell me the number again?
sorry, 705.3, payment for goods and services. So I wasn't sure if that was just the same as the topic for payment for goods and services, or is it, I wasn't, that term made me wonder if it was something
You
else.
might want to update that term then, because warrants really mean like the checks.
Okay.
So if you prefer that.
Okay.
wording.
If you could look at that one, Chase, please.
Do, can give a suggestion for.
Checks.
Okay, checks,
Yeah.
that's what we want
It's real easy.
I was like, this is like, it's another debt reference. Or, thank you.
Yeah, that might be easier.
Trying to determine if I have another question here. All right, I have one more question, sorry. 707.5 internal controls. There, in the references to the responsible person, instead of where it's pretty much throughout been superintendent or CFO, it's superintendent or designee, and I don't know if we want to, if that should be, so I'm looking in, there's one of those in paragraph 2, and then in paragraph 3, a couple of them, and I wasn't sure, because I know that there are different people who are responsible for different aspects of things, and so I wasn't sure if that needed to be clarified as CFO for the designee.
We can, that's a good catch earlier on in that, I think in the last paragraph.
Yeah, that came out.
Sorry?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was an intentional, differentiation, or if it should all be the same.
There is an intentional
Yeah.
differentiation in the last
Yeah.
paragraph, given kind of what that one speaks to.
Yeah, so it's board president, so the CFO there,
Right,
yeah.
But throughout policy,
Throughout
we've been trying
policy,
to
we
name
have,
who the
yes.
designee is.
So earlier in the
Yeah.
policy, we can make that correction from designee to,
Yeah, it's
Okay.
in the third paragraph too.
Yeah, 2 of them in the third, 1 in the second.
Okay.
And then going to the last paragraph, about midway through, there's a reference to the superintendent or designee, and I didn't know if that should also be board president in that same paragraph, because it was changed to the top of that paragraph.
Thank you for catching this.
Anyway,
There were a couple, and I can't remember if it was in the 700s or 800s, where, and this isn't a very good example, because they pointed it out, but there are places where there might be more than one person that
Yes.
is responsible for coming up with something, so
Yep.
we left it more general as designee. I don't think, Director Juan Fraser, that this policy speaks to that, but there were some places where we intentionally left it a little.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons I asked,
Yeah.
because I saw that elsewhere. Okay, thank you.
I mean, technically, right, I mean, in a different sense, but as educators, we're all mandatory reporters when we think about reporting things about child abuse. And so in that last paragraph, really any employee that suspects embezzlement or fraud should be reporting it to the state auditor. It shouldn't just be something that lands on the board president. It should be any board member, it should be the superintendent, but really any employee that thinks that there's something going on should have that ability. That's maybe a broader concept, but it might be something worth having some discussion and talking through at some point.
So I have, also have a note about implications for staff training with respect to this particular policy. I mean, and of course, lots of other ones too. But this is just really, like, kind of to your point, it's really a cultural thing, and trying to create an environment in which people are, and do take that personal responsibility for if you observe something that seems off, or, you know, ask questions, or in the case of something you think needs to be reported, to report it. And so I'm just always thinking about, how do we translate these policies into, like, how we do our everyday? And I just feel like this is a big one for that, and just talk, because I think that we didn't, I don't think it's how we've been, you know, always, and as partly, as a contributing factor to how we're in the spot we're in right now. And I would love to work on building the environment where people can say, I mean, hopefully there's never going to be a need,
Right.
but it's valued to speak up.
And I think
there's
not only
something.
policies, but there's a board discussion later tonight on a reporting structure that
Yeah.
We think about it in terms of working conditions, but I also think if somebody saw something like this, that would be a legit reason to use that reporting structure as well. And we can definitely work on some of those training pieces and things of that nature too, even if they're beyond policy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a time.
Yeah.
It's partly a thing that has to happen over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Moving on to 800s. Chase, take a second.
Quick clarification.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I believe the 700s are on for action tonight too, Ken?
So just take them off. Or
Table it
just
again?
table it again.
I
Yeah,
think so.
That's fine.
I don't think that there's it doesn't mean we're out of compliance. We have
Yeah.
policies, it's just
Yeah.
the
Right.
revisions aren't being updated. Okay. 800s, really more just kind of title changes to the point that Director Horn Fraser was making, tried to go through and change designee to Chief Operating Officer where appropriate, Health Service Manager to Senior Health Services Manager. So just some of those kind of updates there, nothing of real substance in the 800s, but if board members had questions or want to see other changes as they look through these policies, we'll just open it up for discussion.
I don't have any changes. I just was reminded of something that I emailed to the superintendent a week or two ago about, and I'm sure it might take some time, but an inventory list of all of our real estate and properties as I read through 802.4 capital assets. So
Yep.
that reminded me of that.
We're working on that one.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
I didn't have any.
Just real properties, real estate.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Didn't interrupt you.
I didn't have any changes, but 802.7 energy conservation brought a question to mind, which was, so that one is just about, stewardship, basically, turning off the lights. And I think that's great. But it also made me think about any other policy related to energy conservation, like when there is a choice to purchase a vehicle that is, electric. I mean, I don't know if we are going in that direction at all, or if it's something we want to consider down the road.
So do you want to go?
You go ahead.
You're going to correct me?
No.
We're going to talk about his electric truck over
Right.
there.
I think this goes to our climate action plan.
Okay.
And that annual update we had in trying to continue to meet our goals.
Okay.
And looking at ways to move that direction. And so it might be worth linking our plan into this policy.
Yeah.
Because you're right, that would be more of a living document of showing where we're making progress, how we're tracking it. From that overall, I'd have to turn over to Kurt to talk more of some of the specifics
mean, yeah, this could be 3 pages long with all kinds of different things, and that's kind of what
Right.
the climate action plan, I think, focuses in on. And the climate action plan was oriented, I think we reviewed it probably right before you joined the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. It's more steered toward greenhouse gas emission
Yeah.
reduction, but that's not to say that we can't expand the role of that and view other things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there are other more pressing priorities at the moment, but I would love to see us get a little more intentional about that too, and because I think it can do a lot of good things for not only us and our community, but our students, you know, to see that in action.
I think we get a chance to review the climate action plan. We'll see that it is.
Yeah, I will do that.
Definitely has a set of very ambitious goals.
Thank you.
Reducing carbon production.
We can send you a copy.
But it's not a turn off the lights approach.
Correct.
It's much more of a buy electric vehicles
Yes.
or not.
And that's one of the other pieces that some of it's out, not beyond our control, but we have to work with partners, whether it's
Right.
our energy providers
Yeah.
or because we contract out our busing service, and we try to make some strides even in our transportation contracts about what are they looking at? And, you know, as we've talked about a lot, you know, recently is it's cost, and so that's
Right.
always a balancing factor along with that too. But this would be a good place to get a regulation. And get it better aligned with board policy. So we'll make that addition.
Okay, ready for
Policy
the next?
primers?
Yep, policy primers.
So policy primers are really, I believe all of this is updates in the one. And it's about protected class identification and just updated to align with current Iowa law and DE guidance from January, along with what we've said as a district. So you will see those all updated. We've not made any changes substantively beyond what's been recommended by IASB. Laura did do some format updating to some of the procedures to better align with how we conduct investigations, but nothing real substantive in terms of the updates on the policy primers.
Anybody have any comments or questions on that one? Okay, moving on to 303.2, administrator qualifications, recruitment, and appointment.
What about policy?
What about 207?
Did-
That's not on there because we.
207 wasn't on your sheet of paper, Chase.
Your fault.
207, Board of Directors, yeah, Board of Directors, Legal Counsel.
This was added, but
Yeah,
I don't really have any.
This is
I don't-
why I'm here,
yeah.
actually, yeah. So yeah, I was just hoping we could take a look at this, because of some kind of issues that have come up, you know, the last couple of months with us working with our legal counsel. I think one thing that could simplify it, that would be really simple, is I understand the need to go through our board leadership to send the questions to legal because there may be multiple questions and we don't want to duplicate the questions. But when the attorneys send their recommendations back, I don't see why we need a second bottleneck coming through board leadership. I would prefer that our attorneys just email the board, just like when we send in a director inquiry. The response doesn't go to one person, it goes to the whole board. So that's one thing that I would like to see changed.
Do you know, I mean, does it say that? We've asked for that, so I don't know.
It doesn't say that, but that's our practice, and so I wondered if
Right,
we
I
could
mean,
put it
but
in the
we've asked,
policy.
we've
Yeah,
said, you know,
yeah,
send it to everybody.
yeah, but they're not doing it, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we put it in policy, but I mean, that's our policy, not theirs, so I guess.
But they follow our policies.
Yeah.
They know what our policies are, right? Yeah. And they're
Yeah.
very strict about following our policies, so.
Yeah.
I think if we put it into policy, then we would follow it. also the idea that individual board members can't, I mean, I think in normal situations, it makes sense to go through board leadership, but, you know, there may be situations where, you know, a minority board member needs legal advice, you know, where trust is strained, and where I don't think that we should chill that inquiry out of concern for liability. I mean, our policy stipulates that board member then needs to pay for the legal advice. So that concerns me, because I think that has a chilling effect on board members reaching out to legal counsel when it really is warranted. I mean, I think a policy where we say something more along the lines of individual board members may contact legal counsel for the purpose of obtaining general information or clarification, provided such contact is limited in scope and does not direct or authorize legal action on behalf of the district and does not create significant cost to the district.
When you say minority,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
Well, when you have a divided board, you know, you might have, you know, a minority, you know, not a board majority. You don't have 4 or 5 board members. There may be a couple of board members who have a different view than the rest of the board, and they need legal advice. And you know, there may be dynamics on the board where that may be difficult for them to get that advice answered if they go through board leadership that doesn't agree. This is theoretical. You know, I'm thinking toward, you know, we don't write our policies for us. We write our policies for future boards, right? So,
But I guess you don't know necessarily on every issue how the whole board feels about it, right? But you're saying just if you feel you're going to be in the minority on some question you want to ask.
no, I mean, I think based upon, you know, what happens at the board table, people understand, you know, like how votes are taken. People understand if they're in the minority. If there's a vote and only 2 people are voting no, they're in the minority, right?
Right.
Okay.
So, but you mean on that kind of an issue where we've had a vote on something and you want more clarification?
Yeah, right, yeah, because that's where our liability is how we vote, so.
There could be a situation where someone is acting in, whistleblower is too stronger of a word than I want to use, but kind of in that capacity where they have a legal question, but they may have a disagreement with leadership on whether that question could or should be asked. So then that question just floats out into the abyss. It never gets asked.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to find a way to make sure that we are legally protecting all the board members.
Yeah, I appreciate the stipulations, you mentioned, like, it's, you know, not some huge question that's gonna take them 40 hours to research, or, you know, something, I forget exactly what you said in your your stipulations. But
Yeah, it does
it's-
not create significant cost, yeah, and it, you know, you're not directing the, it's limited in scope, so.
Well, and, sorry, this is a board discussion, but
Yeah.
if you couple it with Director Finch's first edition, the board would then all have access to the same information.
Yeah, exactly,
And so
yeah,
like,
it's
so to
not
be able
coming
to,
just to the person.
right, so to be able to
that's-
add like as a
Yeah.
check about, is it going too far, is it too expensive?
Right.
Because, so to your earlier point about making sure legal counsel is responding to the full board,
Yeah.
that would kind of act like I said,
Your check.
a check to
Yeah.
make sure that it isn't being used.
And abused,
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And would you want to consider language of, like, more than one board member has the question, like, to deal with your minority concern? Because I think part of the original purpose of it is to, you know, a single board member committing resources on behalf of the district, right? So is that a way that you could basically say, okay, like back to the minority thing, okay, more than one person has this question, maybe not a majority.
Sure.
You know, so
Right.
that might be some language you just want to think about too, so it's not an individual, right? Or maybe you want an individual, I don't know, I'm just saying that could be an option if that was a
Yeah.
concern at all.
Well, you know, the policy was, what were in the policy that it said, if, a board member could ask the question if the majority of the board gave their permission, basically, but like, how is that supposed to happen?
Right.
Right? I mean,
Right. We're gonna vote on whether or not we're gonna.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had the same question, like, what's the mechanism for that approval to be?
Right, yeah.
Obtained, and then I also thought that, the stipulation at the end of the existing policy, it's responsibility of the superintendent to keep the board informed of matters for which legal counsel was consulted, particularly if the legal services will involve unusual expense. I thought, that's just very muddy, because why would information not be shared with the board? That, you know, from legal counsel, like, why does the cost of the advice matter, is kind of my question there. And so that's not exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but it is,
Yeah.
it is related, because I'm also imagining circumstances in which there is a person who has arrived at a conclusion or a perspective early in the process of something, and others are still working their way through to it and may benefit from the answers to the same questions, but it's just not apparent yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, that last part is, I mean, I don't have any concerns about that, but I do wonder if we define unusual expense. I mean, that's kind of vague.
It does seem
So-
weird that that's the only, like, descriptor.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that that's the only, seems like there should be other reasons, right? That not just an unusual expense, it would be, okay, what are the appropriate, like, frameworks for, obviously, probably not personnel, right, when we're going on those things, but there are other topics, right, that would go above and beyond just unusual expense, that would be
Yeah.
relevant for the board to have. So I wonder if we could work on that last one a little bit more.
Can you forward Kim and I that?
Sure.
Rattle off
You
that?
bet,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. Copy.
Probably just gonna keep getting louder out there.
I'm hearing the
Show up.
tuning.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Warm up out there.
So are we done with that one? Move on. Next one will be 303.2, Administrator Qualifications, Recruitment and Appointment.
So what we have here is 303.2 with some suggested revisions. I know there's a lot of green and a lot of red on here. Some of it's things that were already included in the process, or things that maybe we have done in practice but haven't been outlined in the process. And so trying to really clarify that. Also trying to clarify that the board should and can have a role in the hiring of positions if they want to. I had gotten some feedback from various board members, and then I also kind of just did some looking about, okay, what are other districts doing? And so there was, kind of what I saw was that really they tried to make that differentiation where the board would be involved when we're talking about either central office administrators or even lead building principals. There wasn't a lot of places where board members
Yeah.
were necessarily sitting in on the assistant principal interviews and the teacher interviews. There were some districts where it was just, even just high school principals of your largest schools, but I didn't really want to make that sort of specific determination. So for the language for the board to consider, just left it at lead building principals and then central office administrators to give you all something to talk about on the front end. And then on the back end of the process, as you all know, our process currently has been to provide you advanced notice of who the recommended candidate's going to be from the superintendent, and just to dig into some questions. That's kind of gone up and down over the years about what information we've provided. So I tried to include what I thought was enough information so that the board would have background on the candidate, could also have confidence in the process being followed and have that information if they wanted to ask questions, without taxing the board to basically redo interviews on the paper. And so that was where I was trying to strike that balance. But again, just something in writing for the board to discuss, and we're taking feedback and considerations that you all like us to in revising this policy.
I thought it looked good, as is. And as you say, it's things that are sort of in practice already, but.
I definitely like it for the central administrators. For building principals, I'll ask Molly, I mean, will it be perceived that we are sort of inserting ourselves where, I would like more transparency when we're talking about building level administrators. Perhaps, a summary explaining why that person was chosen over the other considered candidate, and can be, de-identified, But I would like to see more transparency at the building level, but I don't necessarily think that we as board members should be, kind of inserting ourselves into that interview process, because I think there's a lot of building culture that we don't understand, and so. But that's just my opinion on whatever the rest of the 7.
I mean, there are other people that are included in building level, like community people. It may be just
Too much.
We got, well, no, we just have a board member there too. I mean, I don't know how, I'm trying to think about how, I don't know.
I mean, if she's not here, so I pick on Lisa, right?
Right.
But Lisa's also is, or is going to be a parent? Or will be, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, board members all live in the communities,
Sure,
and so
right.
you would have that. But to your initial point, Director Finch, so it would kind of what we had as what we would
Maybe.
include for the board, even putting aside about which interviews board members participated in, that idea of giving the resume, the number of applicants and the candidates reviewed, and then kind of that summary. Would that work for all of those hires? And then look at which
For the building level?
building?
Yeah. That's how
Okay.
I feel about it.
Right,
but-
and it does say may participate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like we have to have somebody in all of them.
I mean, the way that I would envision it is that I'd rather have community members that are invested in that high school or elementary school before me sitting in there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or a board member. But if that board member is a part of that community,
Sure.
I don't really have,
Agree. Do you have any thoughts?
What about a will for central office and a may for the building level?
yeah.
Then at least creates the option, like you said, if there's an intersection or direct where they go, that makes sense.
It's like I don't want 4 board members sitting on a West High and a West High interview process and then 1 community member from West High or something like that. That's the,
Yeah.
okay, so with that,
Bring those, we'll make those revisions.
get making those revisions. And then last of all, 303.4, salary and other compensation.
So we talked about this a couple of times. I think the first time there was just one word change in the first paragraph, and we came back and added that green paragraph to replace the second paragraph. Then after the last conversation, there was we thought a request to make sure the benefit structure was included in that top part, and also to clarify and make sure clarity around board members' participation in the meet and confer process as part of the policy.
And Director Finch, I
Right,
don't want to
you need
insert
to
you,
do
but
this?
we
Yeah,
kind of
please.
talked about this week. I think
Oh.
there's maybe a piece too about notification of the board about changes. Did you have some proposed language already?
Well, I didn't, I just did if we
Just like a step from if something's agreed to and meet and confer, then how are those changes communicated to the
Right,
board?
yeah.
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 go back to that last provision. Would that create a structure where a single board member would be influencing that administrator's salary, whereas other board, whereas that would be a single board member doing that? Or is there a way for the majority of the board to make the final decision about the administrator's salary? I mean, I'm fine for having single board members in the process, but
On this
Are
policy,
we,
or this
are we
selection
just
policy?
talking about conveying the information
Right.
from the meet and confer? We're not talking about having a part in the decision?
oh, okay.
Just about getting the information about the, because there was some contract changes that I didn't necessarily
And
know.
that's in the language now.
I think that's what we bring
Clarify.
back.
We just want to clarify that that information will come to us when there's an after the meeting.
So, okay, great, okay.
Because right now, as it stands, the way that we approve the administrator contracts is by approving the personnel agenda that lists their salaries without actually seeing their contracts. So if there was any changes to the structure of the contracts, we would not know. And so that's what we're talking about changing is
Okay.
a method to convey those changes to the board before we approve.
If it helps with the visual, and again, we'll do what the board wants to do, but the way I look at it or think about it, Charlie, is that when we give you all a summary sheet for the negotiated groups, we kind of say the package, for example, was 2.5%, and so does the salary scale, or we made this change to this language piece. We would add the meet and confer groups, that list, and so then you'd have a summary that says the admin package was 2% and it did this, this, and this. So you would get that same sort of summary of changes like we do with our negotiated groups. It's how I have it as I've tried to think through and work through this.
Okay.
That's how I've kind of visualized it. But again, if the board would want to see something different, we could definitely do that as well.
Should be like a wrap-up exempt session when we've settled with the groups. And I think we found one good example from
We
like
did.
4 years ago where we did that, but I'm just not sure it's been as consistent. So having it in policy would be, okay, all the groups, all the changes, and then obviously the first time we've done it, I would probably want to bring you back a reset of all those things just to, know what they are, but.
Because I don't. All right.
So come back with those changes and then we'll go at it again. Okay. Seeing as that, no other comments or questions, do I have a motion? Or the next policy and governance meeting will be
It's May 26th.
May 26th.
And it's the 900s,
Yeah.
and the 700s,
And the 300s.
300s, and the 800s.
So we'll just plan on an hour-long meeting.
5 o'clock.
5
5
o'clock,
o'clock.
yeah.
Okay. Got a motion from the floor?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, second it, or Molly got a second?
Second, yes.
All in favor? Yay.